Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. Today's video is the camshaft testing video. Probably the most commented thing that I've heard has been about the camshaft, especially the selection on the LS 408 dyno mule, that it's been used, tested the most, by far. And the two common most things I've heard is you need less split between the intake and exhaust duration, which means this. Let's say, just generic wise, let's say you had a 230 degrees duration on intake, and if you had a 242 degrees on exhaust, that's a 12 degree split. It's a large split. And they're like, well, it's too large for LSs. You need to shrink that up. So that's probably number one. Well, number two. The number one thing said by far has been the lobe separation angle is too wide, and you need to narrow it for use on this LS. So for the record, most of the camshaft testing that's been done, so I've already done two camshafts with this LS 408, one being the BTR Truck North camshaft, the second one being a Texas Speed Stage 2 camshaft. That Texas Speed Stage 2 has a 112 lobe separation. I don't know how many people commented, you should do a 108. 108 is going to be so much better. Also, less split between the intake and exhaust can be so much better. Well, I tested it. So here's how it goes. So before someone thinks I'm influenced by some cam company or whatnot, I'm going to give you the specs for the engine. I'm going to get right to the dyno results, but I want to say this first. Neither one of the camshafts I bought. Neither one of the camshafts was given to me by a camshaft company. So a viewer actually sent in the Texas Speed Stage 2 camshaft. A viewer also sent in this comp cam camshaft that I'm about to show you too. Neither one was supplied directly by the manufacturer. So there's no dog in this hunt is what I'm trying to say. I wasn't influenced by either one. I'm simply going to give you the results. You can do whatever you want with them. So I'm going to give them to you first, and then, which I would tell specs first, the engine. Then I'm going to give you your specs, and then we'll talk more about it. This way you can get through the video a little bit quicker. So the specs for the engine are this. It's a 408. It's cubic inch, because people keep hearing 4.8. But it's a 408 cubic inch LS engine. It's a stroked 6 liter. It's got a 6 liter iron block 434, 4-inch stroke, scat forged rotating assembly, flat top pistons from Icon. And at the time, whenever we're doing this dyno testing with this camshaft, it was using this particular set of heads, which happens to be the ProMax small bore LS3 heads. They have a 208 intake valve with 1/600 exhaust valve. I have flow numbers and all that. I'd be happy to share in this video as well. If you're curious, you'll have to watch after the dyno numbers. But anyway, that's the head that was used. Also, at this time during the testing, I had switched to an Edelbrock Super Victor intake manifold. So I tried the Victor Junior, and the Super Victor actually made more power with this one. So that's what was on it at the time. It had a 1,000 CFM 4150 carburetor, ran on gas. I should say 110 octane gas, because with this particular set of cylinder heads, the chambers are 57-ish cc's, so they're a 13-to-1 compression ratio. So it was ran on 110 for this one, but 1,000 CFM 4150 carburetor, 1 3/4 headers. That's about the sum of the engine. So let me show you the camshaft specs and right to the dyno stuff. Go ahead. Here are the specs for them, just to give you an idea. I had ran the BTR Truck North camshaft. This was its specs, but in the test we're talking about today, really we're comparing these two. The Texas Speed camshaft, from its website, it has a 229 degrees of duration at 50 thousandths, 244 on exhaust. So if you look at it, that's a 15 degree split from intake and exhaust. The lift was 629 on intake, 615 on exhaust, 112 lobe separation. They say 109 installed. I didn't ever actually check that. This cam was sent in by a customer. It has a 243 on intake duration, 246 on exhaust. So if we look at the intake duration, it's significantly more, significantly. Exhaust duration is only 2 degrees more, but the split's 3 degrees. Lift 623 on intake, which isn't that far from that. The intake lift is about the same. The exhaust lift is a little bit left, but in all fairness, that's marginal. This is probably a bigger difference. 108 LSA versus the 112, that's a 4-degree difference, all right? So there's your specs for that. Let's get to the dyno numbers now. I'm gonna show you the raw ones and I'll do an overlay as well. So this was with the Texas Speed. 681 horsepower and it did at 6,600 RPM. It also made 584 foot-pounds of torque. And that was at 5,400 RPM. Ignore this air-fuel ratio. I know I'm gonna keep getting, I have to say this every video. This is measured by the air hat and the fuel meter. One or both of them, I think it's actually the air hat, maybe the fuel meter. I don't know, one of them is not working right or sticking or something. Because this is measured, it's not from an O2 sensor. The O2 sensor is in the header and it's not on this page and it reads correct. It's like 12.8 and sometimes it goes to 13, really good. So point being, ignore this on all the sheets. But anyway, good power, no doubt that's really good power, 681, that's pretty stout. Remember it's 13-1 though. Okay, so this is the Texas Speed camshaft, that's this one. Now, I will tell you, when I put this in, I was like, we're gonna break 700. Here comes 700, because we're only a little off. 681, 20 horsepower. I'm about to break it. We're gonna hit it. Here we go. For all the people on the internet, here's the answer. This is the bigger camshaft, 684. Did it at 6,700 RPM. Torque, 576. Yeah. I know you're thinking, wait, what was it before? 682? 684, you gained 2 horsepower. Yeah, the overlay does a much better job of showing this because, well, you'll see. Here's the overlay. The black line is the Texas Speed. The red is that comp cams, which I've got the specs. Now, as you could tell, I pulled the Texas Speed way at a lower RPM. The reason why is there's no sense, if you're putting this camshaft in your car with that much duration, you need to be pulling down to 3,600 RPM. So we started like at, I think, 42. But it didn't matter. I mean, the trend would just continued worse. I expected this part. The Texas Speed, of course, is better down low. Obviously, it's a smaller camshaft. It's going to make more torque and stuff down low, obviously, right? I didn't expect this. That Texas Speed, through the middle, it lost a little. You can see that the bigger camshaft's a little bit better. And then, boom, that's strange. If you notice, the Texas Speed now makes more peak torque than the bigger camshaft did as well, and even all the way through the middle. And it's only right there. That's your 2 horsepower difference where it's different. That's it. So, internet to facts. This is it. This isn't speculation. This is what the dyno did. This is not jockeying. This is numbers. And what you think and what the dyno does doesn't always correlate. So several people, rightfully so, or rightfully thought, hey, you put a 108, your torque numbers are going to come up, everything should be better. No, it didn't beat it almost anywhere. If you were to put this camshaft in the car and ran them both, the Texas Speed, if you're looking at the camshaft card, you would never think this thing's going to kick the dog crap out of it, and it does. There's nowhere in that race that this is faster. I'm sorry. It just isn't going to happen. This is why I test, because so much of it is based on people just saying things. Now, in fairness, this guy sent in because he also thought, because he said, this is my magic cam. It's been fantastic. It works great. And it may be on his combination, because I'm going to give some caveats here in a second to kind of justify why I'm saying that. But maybe, but not in this one. And this isn't that far off, except for there's one big thing. And I know what he was thinking. The reason why I also thought it was going to break 700 is because this was the difference in power between the BTR camshaft and the Texas Speed. If you look at the BTR camshaft, this is the Texas Speed's red, and the BTR camshaft's black, we gained almost 70 horsepower just by switching to Texas Speed. So I'm thinking, well, shoot, just a little bit more. I mean, 70 horsepower, clearly there should be more there. It just didn't happen. So for all those people that thought, one, the 108 lobe separation is definitely going to be a win, that's not true. For those that also thought that the less split between the intake and exhaust, you don't need it, because I've heard that so much time, and I will go off on a rant on this one. So many people have said, your intake to exhaust ratio is the most important thing. Is it 75%? Is it 80%? And I'm speaking like that because every time I read that, that's what I hear in my head you sound like. Because if there's anything that says it should be less, it's this head. Because on the head, which I'll show you the flow numbers in a minute, the intake flows like 350. The exhaust flows over 250 CFM. Of all the heads I usually test, LSs have a pretty good exhaust port because it's so large. So the intake to exhaust ratio is phenomenal. So if there was a head that would be taking advantage of a less intake to exhaust split, it would be this one, and it didn't. So there's a reason why I hate that formula. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, they take the intake flow and the exhaust flow, and there's a ratio between the two. Like the exhaust needs to flow, according to the internet, 80% of the intake. That's garbage, because you can make that percent look really good if you make the exhaust intake flow crappy. So it does not track. But here's why I think a lot of you thought this would work, and it's not a stupid thought, okay? And I want to think anybody thinking I think this is a bad camshaft idea. It's not. I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell you about my 406 small block Chevy, and I know it's not an LS, but bear with me, that I use for engine masters. Now it's an air pump. Small block Chevy LS, they're air pumps. In that particular case, and I wasn't the only one doing this, so I wasn't like reinventing the wheel. In that 406, the camshaft that was used, and it was a solid roller, it was a 244, 248. That's 4-degree split. It flowed 350 on the intake and 230 on exhaust. So it's not that far off as the flow from what this thing actually does. But I had it at, now dig this, a 104 LSA. And you might say, why did you do that? Because this looks like it sucks. Usually when you tighten up the lobe separation and tighten these up, what happens is it builds more torque down low because the cranking compression ratio gets up. The biggest thing is you have way more overlap because you're squeezing the two together, because their LSA squeezes the two lobes together. There's more overlap. Really helps at the low RPMs. So on the engine masters, we were pulling down to 2,500 RPM. The torque would be way up. The problem is, as RPM increases, it's not a good thing, and your horsepower and torque drop off pretty dramatically. But for most of the pool, it's way better. So I expected, and I'm sure he thought the same thing too, that because of the Type 108, we should expect to see more torque here, and then because of the more duration, it should pull more horsepower at the top. But that just doesn't always happen. Now, there's one caveat that probably makes this whole test, and I can see people typing already, weird. This is 13 to 1. When I was telling about my 406 that I use for engine masters, it was 11.5 to 1. So maybe this 108 LSA isn't the best for a 13 to 1 compression ratio, which, understandably, I hope people watch the whole video. The next time the engine goes on the dyno, I'm switching heads. So the heads are going to go from this to a set of my ported Brodix BR3 heads, which in all fairness is probably going to be the least horsepower ones, even though I ported them. And the reason why is because we're going to go from 13 to 1 down to 7 to 1, because the chamber is so much larger. It's the largest chamber of all the heads I'm going to be testing. I'm still going to have that same camshaft in. Now, I will do a follow-up video because that camshaft will still be in it with a lesser compression ratio, and we'll see if that makes any difference. Then I'm going to switch back to that one to see if it made any difference with that particular set of cylinder heads. Because maybe in that case, these might be flipped, because this is just one test. But the reason why I'm showing you it, the biggest thing, is because people parrot bad things all the time on the internet. So many do. The sheer number of people that have said that in comments, I said, you need to wait for testing because I'd already tested it. It just doesn't always happen that way. So if you haven't tested it, you really probably should not be saying, you need to do this, it's going to make more. Just because somebody on some Corvette forum or LS1 Tech forum or whatever said it would work doesn't necessarily mean it was. I mean, did you ever see their car actually run? It's so fast, you never even see it at the track, right? Now, I told you I'd show you the flow numbers for those tech junkies that want some of the information about the heads, see if they can get it to correlate. Let me go ahead and stop this video real quick, and then I'll pull out those flow numbers for you guys, and then we can just go on. I forgot to mention, if you would like to get these dyno results text to you, and it won't be just this, it'll be everything that was from the last LS Dyno session. which also includes the 85 testing, which will probably be next week's video. All of that stuff, what you can do is there's going to be a link in the description, and you could purchase them, and it costs $30, and I'll text you all the dyno sheets. This way, if you have a hard time seeing on your phone, you can get it there. Also, all of this, including the flow numbers, because the flow numbers won't be texted to you, but dyno sheets will. But all the flow numbers, every bit of data, I'm putting those into a solid book that you can actually physically hold and read. That book is available for pre-sale. Now, it's not available yet because I'm going to finish testing all the different cylinder heads. So I still have the Brodix BR3 heads still to test, the ProMax large bore, or medium bore, I should say, heads to test, and also I'm going to retest the AFR Enforcer LS3s after porting. And of course, different camshafts, which I'll show you in just a minute as well, because I'll just tell you about it. If you didn't watch Friday's video and you're not subscribed, you really should subscribe. But on Friday's video, I actually showed the camshaft that's also going to be tested with the next set of cylinder heads, those Brodix BR3 heads. It will actually have tested 3 camshafts. It will have tested the one, this 243, 246 deal, and then also the Texas Speed Stage 2, and also another one that comes from Urson, which is kind of in between. It has a 234 intake duration, 246 exhaust duration on a 108. That will also be tested in those Brodix BR3s. But anyway, all that stuff's going to be put into one book, and that's available for pre-sale, which will also be a link in the description. Now, the book's expensive because it'll have at least tested 6 or 7 sets of heads, at least 4 camshafts, several manifolds, fuel, a bunch of stuff. Anyway, once it's all done, which is probably going to wrap up around October, they'll be printed, and if you order them, out they go, and it'll be nice stuff. Definitely worth reading. But anyway, yeah, do that. Also, if you're wanting to purchase any cylinder heads, that's primarily what my business is in dyno testing. It's cylinder heads. So I board heads and I sell cylinder heads. So if you want to support the cause and you actually need cylinder heads, even if they're in stock form, out of the box, I do sell them. So that would be helpful. But anyway, to the numbers. This is just one of the sheets. I haven't completely got it all finished, but those ProMaxes, if you watch the previous videos, you know I had to redo the valve job because it didn't seal from the factory. This, which is really hard to see, it's cylinder 4 here. So, and I have to, sorry that it's not as better on the phone here, but as you can tell, it's here, and they're really small because it's comparisons. This is a comparison to stock, but this is the numbers. So it went 257 at 4, at 6 it went 343, at 625 it actually went 351. And I only recorded that because I was like, just see how good it is. And at 640 went 349. It drops off after that. Exhaust flow, like I said, 257, 258 actually at 900, which you're like, you're not 900. 243 at 6. This is without an exhaust pipe. With an exhaust pipe, it's way up there, but I don't flow with an exhaust pipe, probably 270s. Yeah, so the intake exhaust ratio, yeah, that's garbage. If you believe that, you're wrong. It's garbage. It's only when it's really bad that it makes a difference. Those are the flow numbers for that head. For the future reference, just to kind of give you an idea, the next head will be these ones. This is the interesting one. This is the Brodix BR3 that's ported. And I've got some of the measurements just to kind of give you an idea. That chamber is 73 cc that's going on next. So you talk about a drop in compression ratio. These are 57 that are on the engine now to 73. That's a huge drop in compression ratio. Intake volume's 291 cc's. We're like, oh my gosh, that's huge. They start off at 270. So I had to do some work onto them just to improve them because they really did not move that much air anyway. 270 cc port that goes 340 CFM that just ain't good. So yeah, I did gain some cc's. Wasn't really trying to gain it, but I had to get to flow more air, which it does pick up. Yeah, so they're big. Exhaust 98 cc's. I have all the measurements for that. But the head itself, this is what's interesting. The Brodix one's at the least advantage too because all the others are a lesser valve angle. So like the AFR is a 13 degree. These ProMaxes are 11 degree. These are 15, and they're all like almost like stock. They literally took a stock type chamber too, so it's like the worst chamber design. But if you look at 4, it does 274, so it actually outflows these small bores. And this should be, I gotta scroll my paper over here. There we go. Let's see, sorry about the bad. At 600, it goes 353, which is not, that's pretty good. But here's what the interesting part. It climbs. It's actually 379 at 700. None of the rest do that. And then it does drop off a little bit. It comes back. This actually has the best number of all of those at that number. So the BR3 head being bigger, it still flows more at the 700, even though we're gonna be like a 6 something lift, 630 obviously, but it's really, really good there. The exhaust side, which I gotta find that again somewhere, but this is on the Superflow to give you an idea. The exhaust on the BR3 is gonna be 246. It's about the same, but it's port's smaller than that, for sure. Flows about the same, but it's way smaller. So that's the next head that's getting tested. So it'll be tested with this camshaft that I'm mentioning. And then also, of course, the 234, 246, and then with the 108, and back to the Texas Speed Stage 2. But anyway, hopefully you guys get something out of this. As you can tell, I've got all the flow numbers from all these that are going on. Yeah, still a long ways to go, but yeah, we're gonna see what happens here and go from there. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Feel free to comment away. I'm gonna do my best not to respond negatively to some of them. No one makes it in the video. That's why I'm talking to my true viewers that are watching this at this point. I'm gonna try my best to not ignore some of the negative, because it's gonna happen, because everybody's a camshaft expert on the internet. Everybody. Even though they've only had one camshaft in their engine ever, they're an internet expert on cams, I promise. And you're like, well, you seem to be that way. No, I just test camshafts. Yes, I spec camshafts, but if you ever ask me, am I an expert at camshafts? No, I'm pretty good at picking them, but definitely not the professional best that there ever is. And I know the formula people are about to drag out their formulas, like, you forgot to carry the one. But no, I'm just giving you the result, man. Obviously, I'm going to do more testing with this, so it's not done, so we can verify the results again. Because if it does it again on the lower compression, you really need to question what you're doing there. At least on the LS engine. On the small block Chevy, it seemed like it really did work. I know for sure on mine it did. Just to give you an idea, that 406 that was used for engine masters on the same dyno made 571 foot-pounds of torque. This at 13 to 1 made 580. It only made 9 foot-pounds more torque at 2 more points of compression. So yeah, and that's pretty outstanding. So I get where that's coming from too, but also that was a saw roller. So if you converted that to a hydraulic roller, really that 244 is really more like a 238 on a hydraulic roller. But anyway, yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Remember, I'm no Superman. Feel free to comment away. Good video, I hope, for you. You got some information on it. I don't pour cast iron heads. You guys take care.